into form, through form, back into form, through form, out and back into form immediately, through form, out and back into form immediately, through form, out and back into the next form, through form, out and back into the next form. This is the cycle of existence for us as microcosmic beings, never ending, infinitely, never dying, simply jumping from one form to the next form, infinitely and forever. The form will expire. We will immediately jump into the new form in a nanosecond, because we are eternal beings, just like Amma, never ending, infinite and unlimited power, trying to express ourselves through these human forms. So we'll go out and back into the next form, go live through this form, come to a peak at the top, and then age out. The form will age out. Our microcosmic spirit will leave that form and jump back into the next form. Live through that form. Wear that form out. Leave that form and animate the next form. This is the cycle of existence for us, the microcosmic beings, the microcosmic expressions of the totality, the macrocosmic being we call Amma, endlessly and forever, jumping into form, living through these forms. The form wears out, cannot keep up with us, so we will jump from that form into the next form, endlessly and forever, living through these forms, not to be confused as being the forms. We simply jump from one form to the next form, live through that form. As the form ages out, we will simply transform into the next form, endlessly and forever. This is the cycle of our existence. How you doing, family? Welcome to another Bantu Morpheous workshop. I'm going to switch it up a little bit with this workshop video. Instead of me, and again, what we're doing is following up on this workshop is based on my book and my concepts in my book, The Anatomy of Existence and the Power of Belief. We're gonna follow up here with, instead of what I'm gonna kind of switch it up today. I wanna, instead of me just, continuing to repeat the things that I've been teaching in my book, The Anatomy of Existence and the Power of Belief, I'm gonna critique a YouTube video of one of my top analysts, Dr Oba T'Shaka, who is a phenomenal thinker and teacher. How you doing, family? Okay, I'm going to continue from where we left off. This will be movie number 9. I've decided to break this up into separate bites so that we can really analyze and critique Dr. Oba T'Shaka's lecture series here. Again, welcome to Bantu Morpheous. This is number 9 of my lecture series 3, or workshop series 3. And we are doing a comparative critique of Dr. Oba T'Shaka's lecture series here, where he is talking about using African models in order to heal the world in essence, but primarily for Africans in America, who we are, and how we can use the African cultural models and concepts in order to heal the American culture and ultimately the world, to save it from the destructive nature of what I call the instinctive intelligence of the human form. And what I talk about in my book is that the world is dominated primarily by too many microcosmic beings that are trapped in the human form vehicles that are dominated by the instinctive intelligence instead of the instinctive intelligence being dominated by the intuitive intelligence that the microcosmic being that every human being is, in order to better express the perfection that we are as microcosmic expressions of Ama, the totality that the Europeans call God. So I'm going to continue where we left off and do this critique on Dr. Oba T'Shaka's lecture series here.
System of thought, the white system of economics, the white system of education. Many of us have come to lose confidence in our own way, in our own culture. And in fact, many of us don't even know what it is, because we have assumed that there's no progress in being African. We must become mental Europeans, and then out of that, we can get a good job. You know, they brought us over here to get a job. It may not have.
And I wanted to say something about this that I didn't mention, because this was right at the end of the last movie. Again, Dr. Oba T'Shaka is absolutely right. But the point I want to bring out is my book focuses more on a more organic aspect of this critique that he's giving about the situation that Africans in America find ourselves. It's deeper than that, folks. If you go beyond the cultural, beyond the racial, then you bring it down to the organic human structure as it relates to the microcosmic being and what we are as organic spiritual beings having a human experience. What he's talking about is so very true, but what it overlooks superficially is the basics. And we got to go take it back to first principle. We got to take it down to its basic organic structure. And again, I'm going to keep repeating. What he's talking about is that the despiritualization is the actual, a beautiful description of what my book talks about. The intuitive intelligence, which is the microcosmic being or spirit, has been disconnected from the human forms, not with Africans in America primarily. We're still functioning from that, but we don't know it. We're just doing it because it's organic to what we are and the way our culture is and the way our ethnicity and the way that we have been functioning through these forms for hundreds of thousands of years. We have evolved. Africans who now are in America, some are in the Caribbean, some are in Europe, some are all over the, we're Africans all over the place. Okay, the people that call themselves Europeans are Africans that have been mutated and forced into the caves of Europe for hundreds of years, thousands of years, okay? And they became mutated, even though, as I said earlier, they were already albinos. But when they got caught in the Ice Age, they further mutated after being exposed to temperatures that are, nearly 100 degrees below zero for hundreds and thousands of years. If that happens to anybody, they're gonna become like they are. Eyes are gonna turn blue, their noses are gonna get skinny. Anything that protrudes will freeze and drop off. So therefore, their body adapted. That's the nature of the human form. Like I said, the human form is going to work to survive. That's a part of its organic AI, automatic intelligence, that it's going to automatically transform itself in order that it will survive. And those that do not transform simply die off. But then the next, I think that's in the nature of the human form. It's always going to come back better and more adapted to the new environment. By nature and organically, automatically, it's going to do that. That's a part of its survival, fight or flight survival basics, okay? So what Dr. Oba T'Shaka is talking about is absolutely right. But what he is not teaching, well, he's I guess this is not where this is supposed to be taught, I guess, in fairness to him. But what I'm bringing out in my critique, okay, and I'm not, it's not a criticism of what Dr. Oba T'Shaka is doing. It's just, I'm using it as an opportunity to teach my perspective, which is to show this is what happens when the intuitive intelligence is not trained and awakened early between the ages of birth and 21 to dominate the physical form vehicle. So when Dr. Oba T'Shaka mentioned, by the way, that to disconnect the spirit from the physical form, or take spirituality, despiritualized as he calls it, cultures, he's right in that sense. But I want to add this little nuance. What I'm going to use, and while he's making that point, is I want to bring out this aspect of that point, is that we must, once the corruption has happened and the human form has been allowed to be dominated by the instinct of the human form, which is the AI, the automatic intelligence, once that is allowed to happen, and the intuitive intelligence does not take charge of the human form and dominate and suppress the instinctive intelligence with knowledge and wisdom that comes from the intuitive intelligence that is directly connected to perfection and all knowledge, then you have to separate mentally and disconnect and not buy into the illusion that every thought is you and that every emotion is you. You're not the emotion, you're not the thought, you're not the mind, and you're certainly not the human form. We're connected in the sense through Ama, we're connected. The human form is a part of Ama, just like we are an expression of Ama, but we are a perspective of Ama. So that puts us on a higher level as a microcosmic being. We are a perspective, a unique perspective of Ama, okay, which is a multifaceted, complex intelligence and awareness. The intuitive intelligence is the intelligence, but the awareness that we are a perspective. We feel it, we are it. That perspective, and that's what makes us unique from the other animals. And that's why we draw, and that's why we document, and that's why we leave a documented and data record of everything we've done in our past lives, so that we can awaken faster. That's the intelligence. See, that's what's guiding everything that we do. That's our AI, our automatic intelligence, but our automatic intelligence is intuitive, not instinctive. Okay, just wanted to make that point.
Been very good, but it's a job, you know what I mean? And so it is this lack of faith in ourselves that often leads us not to want to explore our greatest strengths that lie within us. And of course, I said this before, one of the greatest weaknesses of the African America is we underestimate our own strengths. And the greatest proof of that is most of us haven't even bothered to study our own culture. And most of us have drank the Kool-Aid and believe that we don't have one. And the only way you cannot have a culture is to be exterminated. As long as the people exist, they will maintain a culture. It'll undergo change, but it will remain your culture. So what we have to understand then is Africa, Africans in the diaspora, we face something that no other people face, not only colonialism, but slavery and the tearing apart of both our homeland and then coming under enslaved oppression. And so as a result, as the great author Cmprtv Achebe said, things fall apart. It's our job to put it back together.
Now, the point I want to bring out here, you know, as Africans in America, I want to draw a distinction here about our stamina and our strength, because we were never subjected to the ice. This particular form was never subjected to the ice. And again, we have to remember, we are all spiritual beings riding in human forms. So the difference that exists is not the spiritual being. The difference is the human form. So the question is, what has the human form gone through? Now, I've been blessed to be born in an African human form that was not mutated. And again, all human forms are African, because that's the origin of all human beings. But some of us Africans were mutated. First, we had a two-layer mutation. First, we were mutated by genetic inbreeding that created albinos. That's the first mutation. And then, well, it's a genetic recessive mutation. And then there was the climate mutation that was caused by the massive ice age that some of us were caught in. And my concept is, based on what I've known about anthropology and geology, and that's the evolution of the planet. Anthropology is the evolution of the human form. The reason you gotta ask yourself, why weren't there Europeans before? Why weren't there mutated Africans before 700 AD or 1000 BC, 2000 BC, 3000 BC? Why were there no mutated Africans before that? Well, my logic and my insight and wealth of reading that I've been doing for 45 years, it appears that There were many ice ages, but there were never millions of people on the planet when the other ice ages hit. And in fact, most humanoids were probably still crawling around on all fours. When one of the many earlier ice ages happened, and in many of them, there were no humans at all on the planet. That's why there were no mutated, and because there's it's a convergence of things here. There were not enough humans to cause an inbreeding situation, right? That lived, because otherwise, if you were not normal, you might have been killed instantly. In the more barbaric, when we were more gross, the human forms were more gross and barbaric. So that's one reason, one suggestion that I believe is why there were no mutated Africans. There just weren't enough people on the planet for it to happen. And so when enough people finally came onto the planet, and we had the first mutation of albinism, okay, and which forced those mutated Africans to move toward shadier places, and caves proved to be the best place to give them constant shade and cooler temperatures that their skin could tolerate. Then there was the ice age that hit that they had never experienced, because ice ages usually hit hundreds of years apart, thousands of years apart at that point, for all we know. So when now you have a mutate that got caught into a geographical cataclysm that caused the human form to mutate yet again. And then out of that came these Europeans, and the barbarism, and the stripping away, and the atrophying of the pineal gland, and the stripping away of spirituality and humanity, and creating what I believe would motivated the jealousy and the hatred of God and the hatred of nature, which was caused by the ice and the brutal cold that converted the Africans that were already mutated as albinos, now mutated again into even deeper hatred of nature and God, for first making them albinos and then now putting them in the ice age. Oh, these people have a level of rage that us, the human form that is Black African, we can't even begin to comprehend that. We can't even begin to comprehend the mentality, the rage, and the anger. It's so deep, it's on a subconscious level. I don't think they're even aware of it, you know. But this, you have to keep this in mind. And so the reason why, because, you know, a lot of times what I've been wondering, well, then why, if these people are so recessive, how was it that they were able to dominate and take over the world? Well, you got to understand motivation. The African human form has no concerns about time, because we already know we're forever. That this form is just something we're using right now, but the spirit within us has never been traumatized to the level that these European human forms, mutated African human forms, have experienced. So the subconscious added trauma that is guiding the instinctive intelligence of the human form, the mutated African human form. Oh, you're talking about a matrix of all kinds of paranoia and psycho, schizophrenic, not craziness, that the people who have never been mutated like that or born into those mutated forms, the spirit, microcosmic spirits, and intuitive intelligence trying to get through all of that. Oh, that's gonna take and you know, it's just another challenge for an immortal, infinite spiritual being trapped in these human form is just another challenge. And the rage that these mutated Africans are subjecting or dumping on us Africans who happen to be born into forms that were never mutated, and the jealousy, the hatred against God and nature, and the jealousy of us against us, all of this dumping that they're doing is a jealousy and a rage of misfortune as far as as we're concerned toward them. But to them, it's an attack. They feel like they've been attacked, and so they're striking back out of jealousy and anything else. And as far as they're concerned, they have nothing to lose. They're at the rock bottom. So this is why, and my concept of why they're able to dominate, because their level of desperation and their survival is real, because they're recessive. They're going to disappear. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. If ands, or buts about that. They are going to disappear. And that creates, because you got to remember, the microcosmic being that is within these human forms, mutated Africans, double mutated Africans, okay? Subconscious level, by the way. They're terrified and they have nothing to lose. So therefore, they always said people who burn the boats and have nothing to lose can tend to have create the most change and be the most magnificent, okay, even if it's wrong, okay? But you got to remember, we are eternal spiritual beings. We don't die. We're here forever. Time don't even really exist for us. We're just having an experience here. So we just gonna make it the best experience we can make it. It's not always gonna be happy. It's going to be challenging. And right now we're actually on the upper end of otherwise, prior to this, have been a horrendously challenging situation. We're now on the good end of it, as bad as it may seem. Just the other day, somebody went into a Chinese, now they're attacking the Chinese, these mutated Africans. They're attacking the Chinese now because they think the Chinese brought the virus, because Trump told them it's a Chinese virus. That's how mentally, and see, they just love killing, and they just need any excuse to kill because they're angry and jealous of all the other ones. So they just love killing. This is a product of the ice. Ice makes you even more of a sociopathic killer, because ice is brutal, it's cold, it's the opposite of warmth. And too hot can be a problem too. So any extreme, and ice is an extreme of cold-bloodedness. Okay, so let's move on.
Had other people of color had this level of attack, they would still be struggling with some of the issues we are struggling with. So it's important that we gain a sense of who we are by drawing on our past, by drawing on the deepest part and the best part of our past, so that we can reconstruct a strong sense of identity and a sense of who we are as human beings. Now, so what do we draw from when we're looking for models for just societies? What do we draw from when we're going to gain a deeper understanding of our own humanity? And there are two fundamental sources. And you see behind me these two beings, Nomo twins. Those are the Dogon twins that symbolize the centrality of the male-female, masculine-feminine principle in the cosmos. Dogon philosophy helped reshape me. As I pointed out, this outfit I have on is Dogon. You know what I mean? Because I want to draw on these spirits, especially, but also on African spirits in general. So the two most important systems that we can draw from in both deepening our sense of our identity as Black people and as African people and gaining a deep understanding of our gifts and our destiny. Two most important things that we can draw from is ancient African history, going back as far as you can, and you'll see why in a minute, and the deep thought of Africa and the deep thought of Africans around the world. Now, deep thought is the term that my teacher, Jacob Carruthers, used for philosophy. He didn't like the term philosophy. The Dogon call it deep knowledge.
Now, this deep knowledge is basically what he's saying is the calming down of the instinctive intelligence, the domination of the instinctive intelligence of the human form over millions of years, and not being exposed to the ice, having plenty, living out in a warm climate where there's plenty of water, plenty of food, plenty of sunlight, nice rains coming through, forestation, lots of food, just having plenty and abundance. You know, living a life in a physical form that is intelligence, it's bathing, it has healthy birthing situations, it has more than enough food, an abundance of food, an abundance of happiness, not too many wars, not enough, there's not a lot of killing in there around you in your life. So that means very little trauma. So that means your mental state is well-rounded and harmonious and peaceful. And after hundreds and thousands of years of that, you begin to move to a higher level of consciousness and awareness, because you have, you know, and it's not even a struggle to dominate and control the physical form vehicle, because the physical form vehicle is not being threatened because it has plenty of food to eat and everything. So there is no triggering of a defensive response from the automatic intelligence of the instinctive intelligence itself. There is no desperation. There is no stress. There is no fear of your, annihilation. And as in a black form that is dominant, that even reduces the stress and the fear even more. So it's the exact opposite of the mutated Africans who are suffering from the first mutation of albinoism, and then the second mutation of geographic and catastrophic ice age experience. So that's going to trigger a level of anxiety and desperation and fear of annihilation. That's going to trigger some psycho defensive responses, and they're going to lash out and attack everybody. And the jealousy that's going to trigger from those of us who are not recessive and are not about to be wiped out by mere birth, is going to trigger everything you see coming from the Confederate GOP Republican Party right now. All of the squirming and the pretzel twisting to get around and try to justify and make excuses for the murdering and the killing and the cheating and the lying that they're doing, which I call pretzel building and squirming to justify, while they desperately struggle to not be annihilated through their recessiveness. See, and I'm saying we have to be compassionate, but you have to be brutally, equally defensive, and bring in law enforcement to lock these people down, just like you have to lock down your own. The first thing you have to dominate is your own physical being, and you have to get that under control and not allow it to dominate everything that you do. You have to get that out of the equation. You have to put it on the recessive end, on the minor end of everything. And we have to have a more dominating intelligence of righteousness, balance, decency, goodness, strength, very strong, but yet compassionate and understanding. and gently. This is why we don't need a death penalty. But unfortunately, if you don't kill the body, the soul, the microcosmic being will be trapped in that corrupt, demented, sick, torturous body that is mentally ill. Maybe we need to come up with some therapies. Otherwise, you might need to kill the body in order to save and release the person, the spirit, from the trauma. Is the fear and anxiety is demented. There's no other way to say it. It's demented, and then sometimes you just can't fix that. With therapy, drugs, and things like that. You might be able to, but you sure better know what you're doing, because you're going to unleash the McCracken of craziness that you have never seen before. Well, we've seen it before plenty. It just happened just yesterday. Crazy mutated African went in and murdered 12 people, eight people minimum, 8 people that they know for a fact, all because they're Asian. And the stupid president they had before that told them that it was an Asian fruit, part of their paranoia. See, mental, demented, sick. But see, there is a callousness for life and a jealousy that triggers that will snap at the slightest of form of defeat. And if they feel pressure because they see themselves disappearing, and they feel they have the right to kill. And that's what they will do. 3 sides: genocide, homicide, and then suicide when all else fails. You have to lock them up. Let's move on.
And because they're astrophysicists, they are really referring to the deep knowledge that they have derived from understanding the stellar realm and how the stellar realm connects to humanity. They are among the greatest astrophysicists on the planet. So their conception of the human being, these 2 figures you see behind me, is a conception that the Kemites had as well, that every human being is a miniature universe reflecting a larger universe. And they have an understanding of the stellar realm that is magnificent.
So that's very true. And that is the codification of as above, so below. That we are microcosmic beings having a human experience. We are the below. And the above is Ama, which is the body politic that we are within. Okay? Perfect example of as above, so below.
So their deep thought is going into not only human origins, but planetary origins.
So in this case, deep thought is just another way of saying the intuitive intelligence of the microcosmic being is dominated and fully controls the instinctive intelligence of the human form.
So the deep thought of Africa and the history going back to the very beginnings are the 2 most important sources that we need to draw from. Because, as you're going to see in a minute, they provide the best models. You'll see why in a minute. We also need to draw from the deep thought that comes out of each of our cultures. So since I'm coming out of the New African or the African American reality, then our deep thought, we need to draw from the deep thinkers like Martin R. Delaney, who, along with Edward Wilmot Blyden, were 2 of the most brilliant men of the 19th century, both Black. Zora Neale Hurston, who is, as I pointed out before, one of the masters of our culture, a neglected area, Mules and Men being her best work. George Washington Carver, the greatest scientist of the 20th century, and probably many centuries before, and probably many centuries after. This man had some deep understanding of our culture. He was one of the highest manifestations of it as a kind human being, but the most brilliant. Malcolm X, we had a show 2 weeks ago. It's a really good conversation with Brother Baba Kondo. And we've had over 41 comments coming from people on that. Over 100 people subscribed to this show based on their interaction with that. It was a 3-hour conversation. And I'll bet you're not going to find a better exploration, not only of the assassination of Malcolm's, but a lot of the dynamics, the human dynamics, both human and inhuman, that went into it. But Brother Malcolm, Big Red, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, one of our deepest thinkers, and was constantly evolving. He was reading books that a lot of our scholars still haven't read. Ella Baker was a situational thinker, meaning her thoughts were in the African frame of reference. They came out of her experiences, and it made it very hard for the system to really understand her because she didn't have a laid out blueprint. So, it's kind of hard to figure out, where's this woman going? She was going deep, and she was a reflection of Southern Black culture, which is the most African among us. John Coltrane, the art form that we've created is the highest realm of our culture, at least those that practice it on the highest level. And Coltrane was a deep thinker. He studied history, religion, philosophy, but his philosophy of music was heavy. And he piped into God's mind. And again, he was a beautiful human being. Even on drugs, he didn't steal or lie. And then Dizzy Gillespie, you should read his book, To Be or Not to Buy. That's some deep philosophy in there. Because when you go into the spiritual blues, and then when you go into the blues that are the spirituals, and then when you go into jazz, which is the blues, what you're doing is you're getting into the soul of Black folks, the beauty of Black folks. The best thing that I've done on these shows is the spiritual blues. You should check that one out. That was just like this one is my heart and passion because it's the spiritual blues, baby. Check it out. You know what I mean? As I pointed out before, the great healer among the Lakota, Fool's Crow said, God is a sucker for music. And if God's a sucker for music, I can imagine what a sucker God is for Black music, soulful music. When he hears Aretha Franklin, you hear me? When he hears the souls of Black folks coming out in that African voodoo expression translated to America, God has to perk up and tell his spirits in heaven, hey, be quiet for a minute. Let me hear that. Because what does God get out of our creation? One of the things is whatever we create, especially for good. Because this is the realm of free will. And so we have choices here. And so when we make choices to create beauty, especially to create beauty out of ugliness, God has to have a special appreciation. You have to draw from the deep thoughts of John Henry Clark, my teacher, Dr. Jacob Carruthers, Dr. Asa Hilliard, Dr. Nathan Hare, who is the father of Black Studies, shaped the curriculum for it. My good friend, who's also a boxer, by the way. I saw pictures of him boxing when I was at Howard in the 80s. That man could throw a punch so fast, the guy was on the floor. You know what I mean? And Julia here, she's bad. Dr. Sharsay McIntyre, some of you haven't heard of her, you know. Great scholar, sister. she did a lot of work on the development of prisms. That was her PhD dissertation. And Lerone Bennett and many others. But I want to really stress Lerone because Lerone, as I pointed out before, he wrote many things. He was a historian. But his greatest work was a little 123 or 4-page book called Negro Mood, later renamed Black Mood. His best work, because he got into the depths of African American culture. He didn't know it, but he was describing the continuity of African culture. So we have to draw from the deep well that we have here. Africans in the Caribbean have to do that. Africans in South America, and certainly continental Africans. The modern thinkers who are good, not just the past. Now, why is ancient African history so important? And why is it important to understand the earliest periods of history? The main reason is that these societies, and I'm talking specifically about the hunter-gatherer societies that we neglect and put into the field of anthropology, these are the most just societies. They are also the first, coming into being 144,000 years ago. I cover this in my book, The Integration Trap, Generation Gap, Caused by a Choice Between Two Cultures. So why the most ancient? The Kemites called it the happening before happening happened.
I'm going to wrap this one up here because, again, he's actually hitting on something that I just mentioned earlier about, about the difference between why are the early Africans so different from the mutated ones who was exposed with the double mutation of one being albinos and two being exposed to the Ice Age. So again, think about it. Hunter-gatherers, gathering what? Food, crops, hunting what? Plentiful of game. Cows, deers, whatever, fishing, whatever it was, there was so much abundance available to them. So of course they were the happening before happening happened. They were the ones who had the abundance of all the land. Everything was fertile. There was plenty. The sun was warm, and they had everything they needed. So the instinctive intelligence was not even that active. They were so content that they could actually had the peace. And one brother, I forget who was who mentioned this earlier. In order for you to experience true righteousness, you have to have peace. You have to have tranquility. You have to feel safe. You don't feel like you're going to be annihilated. You're so recessive, you're going to go extinct. Africans have never experienced that because we are the original people. We don't know nothing about the terror and the trauma of being organically extinct because you are so recessive. We don't know nothing about being recessive. I've never experienced being recessive. Everything in history, anthropologically, clearly states that as a black, in this black human form, there's nowhere I'm going to go, but more of me in the future. I'm never going to be annihilated. I will always exist as long as this planet exists on this planet. And I want to mention this other thing too. The microcosmic being, there's an instinctive intelligence of this human form that we're in. The microcosmic being is in this human form. And yes, we are the highest awareness because we write things down, and that's the evidence. No other animals writing anything else down that we could read, at least let me say it that way. Maybe there is some writing going on, fish are doing, dolphins are doing, gorillas are doing. Maybe they're writing in the way, maybe something we can't see and can't read. Maybe there is. I'll leave my mind open for that possibility, but I've never seen any evidence of it. In all my reading, I don't know of any other anthropologists or anybody else to have seen any evidence. Archaeologists have seen any evidence of any other beings, of human forms with beings inside of them writing anything down. Okay, so you got to go with that. All right, but we're gonna break it off here. Go into and we're gonna come back in the next section and see what else Professor Oba T'Shaka has to say. Welcome to another workshop of Bantu Morpheous. This is Bantu Morpheous, and this is my workshop on the anatomy of existence and the power of belief. And we are reviewing and critiquing Dr. Oba T'Shaka's YouTube presentation